25th of January, 341 days to go. 8:56 p.m. I'd struggled to sleep the last couple of nights and was really feeling it. I decided to copy the drawings for myself. I wanted to learn them from the inside, hoping that they would reveal their secret to me. But what could I use as paper? 9:32 p.m. I pulled a black marker out of my bag and stood by one of the walls. I looked down at the Commando Angel carefully and began copying his image directly onto the wallpaper. His form began to take shape as I bent low and stretched high to capture the size of his intimidating stature. Soon he towered above me. I moved further along the wall and drew the monkey next, with the ball in his hand, then the waiter carrying the tray of cards, the Roman emperor and the Sphinx, the cupboard and the number 5, then the rose and the boy. I looked around at my surroundings, and there was still no answer. The images that I'd stared at non-stop since I found them at the mausoleum all glared at me from the walls as if begging for my help. "I don't know," I glared back. "Help me, Dad," I whispered in my head. "What were you trying to say when you drew these?" I felt hopeless and pathetic. In frustration, I began pulling off the wallpaper I'd just drawn on, tearing the giant angel down, ripping off his wings, tearing down the monkey and the Sphinx. I fell to my knees and looked up at the mess I'd made. The image of the waiter was all that remained on the wall. He stared down at me between half torn off sheets of paper and held out his tray. He offered me the Jack and the Ace of Hearts. 21. 21! His 2 cards made a perfect 21 combination. A blackjack! 28th of January. 338 days to go. Joe's Cafe, Macquarie Hills. 12:24 p.m. Why did the waiter have that winning combination on his tray? I needed help from Boges. Being alone for so long in that decrepit old house was sending me crazy. The days were all blurring into each other. The drawings hadn't revealed anything else, and I was no closer to finding out who had attacked my family or why. It had been too dangerous for Boges to meet with me, and so he was trying to keep away until the heat died down. Time was ticking, and I was getting nowhere. Back at the house, I'd heard rats scampering about upstairs and thought I could smell something dead up there. The hot weather was making it worse. I had to get out, so I'd taken the risk of sneaking out again in daylight. I ordered something to eat at a small sandwich shop in a factory area. I sat at the table staring at the television, enjoying the first decent meal I'd had for a long time. Nobody took any notice of me until I nearly fell off my stool. I'd pretended it was because I'd almost dropped my bag, but it was because my mother's face had suddenly filled the screen of the small TV set that sat on the shelf behind the counter. "Please call me again, Cal," she pleaded. "We can sort this out. You must be ill. I don't blame you, and your uncle doesn't blame you either. We beg you to come home and help sort this out. There are good doctors who can help you deal with this." The camera panned back, and there was Uncle Rafe, head bandaged and arm in a sling, standing beside my mother as she spoke, a steadying hand on her shoulder. I was speechless. "Mum," I wanted to say, "why don't you believe me? What's wrong with you?" Surely she knew her own son. My mother spoke again. "We understand. You've been under tremendous pressure lately. Just come home so we can deal with this together." She started crying, and Rafe put his arm around her, pulling her close. I wanted to ring again, but I knew it was pointless. My face flashed up on the screen again, but this time I didn't run or duck for cover. I didn't need to. I didn't look anything like the fresh-faced schoolboy on TV anymore. He was history. 29th of January, 337 days to go. Hideout, 38 St John Street, 10:29 a.m. My mobile rang. "Boges!" "They've stopped watching me. I think I can risk meeting you. What do you need?" "More clothes," I said, "and more food." Having such a good friend meant a lot to me, and without his help I didn't know what I would have done. Soon all my friends would be going back to school. I wondered what they thought of all this. Surely they didn't believe the reports. They'd all soon be doing these ordinary daily things that had been part of my life for the last 10 years, while I was forced to live like a criminal, on the run. 11:45 a.m. When Boges arrived at the derelict house, he stared at me, pointing to the studs in my lip and eyebrow and the tattoos on my neck and arms. "What the hell happened to you?" he asked. I touched my piercings and glanced at the tats. "They're fake," I said. "I had to make a few changes. I know it's lame, but it's a quick fix for now." "You look gross." "And you've packed a lot of weight suddenly," I said, noticing how bulky he was looking. "Thanks." Boges shook his head and laughed. "I didn't want to carry a bag or anything apart from this," Boges said, holding up a plastic bag of stuff he'd brought for me. "So I wore a few extra layers of clothes. Now I can peel them off and give them to you." That's my friend Boges. 12:05 p.m. Again we were staring at the drawings spread out on the floor. "See?" I pointed out the 21 to Boges. "Yeah, it's the winning combination," said Boges. "A blackjack." We stared at each other. I looked more closely at my friend. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You look really white." "It's just the heat," said Boges. "What's happened in here?" he asked, looking around at the shredded wallpaper. "Oh, just a bit of interior decorating." 3:29 p.m. We'd been poring over the drawings for hours, trying to make some sense out of the blackjack drawing. But so what? A blackjack. It could just have been a coincidence. My eyes ached and my brain felt wrung out like a wet sheet. We were never going to crack these drawings. That is, if they could be cracked. After all, I reminded myself, my dad did have a virus that attacked his brain. Who knows what he was thinking? The drawings that had seemed so intensely exciting a little while ago, that had seemed to mean something, now failed to interest me. The angel seemed like nothing but a long dead image from a war that had been finished nearly 100 years ago. "We must be crazy to think these drawings actually mean something." "Come on, man," said Boges. "You're just feeling bad. Even the doctor said these drawings meant something to your father. What about your other relatives? Would they have helpful information about the family? Who else might know about the Ormond riddle?" "I don't really have that many other relatives, except for a really ancient great-uncle who lives somewhere in the country, and some old great-aunt that I've never even met." I only had distant memories of my great-uncle, the uncle whose love of flying had been inherited by my dad. Dad had described him as a real character. I started rubbing my shoulder. "I hurt it ages ago somehow, but it's still aching." Boges took a look. "It's a bit swollen." "Ah, it won't kill me." "But staying here might," said Boges. "You need a country holiday, and an ancient great-uncle is exactly the sort of guy who'd know a lot about the family. He's been around for a long time." I must have looked unwilling because Boges kept talking, trying to convince me. It didn't work. "I don't know where he lives," I said. "Well, tell me where I can find his address," said Boges, "and I'll get it for you tonight." I described a little book Mum kept near the telephone on the kitchen counter. I was pretty sure it would be in there. 9:40 p.m. Later that night, as I sat outside on the back veranda, wondering how I was going to get to the country, I was interrupted by a text message from Boges. "Been throwing up for hours. So sorry. Sick as. Might be better in a couple of hours." I couldn't wait though. I would have to break into my own home. I have to find out tomorrow whether Cal will manage to or not.